As night settles over the ancient world, the sky stretches wide and endless, like a dark ocean untouched by time. The stars shimmer gently above, not as distant points of light, but as old companions that have watched countless ages rise and fall. Their glow feels soft tonight, almost protective, as if they sense a story is about to unfold, a story older than temples, older than heroes, older even in the memory of the world itself. You are invited to drift with it, slowly and peacefully, as the myth of the Gigantomachy begins to take shape in the quiet of your mind. Imagine yourself standing on a quiet hillside in ancient Greece, where the warm scent of earth and herbs lingers in the air. The breeze is cool, brushing lightly past you, carried with it the echoes of forgotten ages. Far below, the distant sea breathes in calm, rhythmic waves, its surface painted silver under the moonlight. There is no rush here, no urgency, only the gentle unfolding of time. The world feels suspended in a dreamlike stillness, as if waiting for the tale of gods and giants to awaken once more. As your eyes follow the horizon, the land seems vast, stretching toward unseen realms. The mountains stand dark and unmoving, their peaks crowned with pale moonlight. These mountains once trembled beneath the footsteps of beings whose names still whisper through mythology, beings born from the earth itself, immense and untamed. But for now, in this peaceful moment, the landscape holds only quiet, like a great breath slowly drawn in before a long-forgotten memory rises. It's easy to imagine that if you listen closely enough, you might hear the faint rhythm of the universe itself, a slow, cosmic heartbeat that has pulsed since the dawn of creation. The ancients believed that stories were not just entertainment, but living fragments of truth, woven into the fabric of existence. Tonight, you are surrounded by that very fabric, resting gently around you like a soft cloak. Every element of nature seems ready to guide you deeper into this ancient world, where myths breathe softly and patiently. The story you are about to sink into is one of the oldest struggles in Greek mythology, yet is also one of the least rushed, unfolding across vast stretches of divine time. The Gigantomachy, the great war between the Olympian gods and the giants, is often told as a tale of thunderous combat and cosmic upheaval. But in this version, we will trace it from a different angle. Slowly, contemplatively, in a way that lets each part of myth settle gently within you. This is not a tale of noise and chaos, but of ancient forces moving like deep currents beneath a tranquil sea. For now, let the beginning be simple. Let it be quiet. Let it be a soft descent into a world long past, where the lines between reality and myth blur, like clouds drifting across the moon. As you stand on that hillside, picture a small campfire glowing nearby. It flickers with a warm amber light, casting delicate shapes across the ground. The flames move slowly, as though they too have grown calm under the night sky. In ancient times, storytellers often sat around fires just like this, telling tales that carried listeners far beyond their immediate lives. The crackling firelight would dance across their faces as they spoke of gods who shaped the heavens, of giants who rose from the earth, and of battles that balanced the fate of creation. You can almost imagine one of those storytellers now, settling onto a smooth stone beside the flame. Their voice is steady, soft, patient, guided by the belief that every story reveals itself in its own time. They do not hurry. They do not force. They simply begin, letting their words drift into the night, like warm smoke rising slowly into the sky. In that spirit, allow the world around you to soften. The air cools slightly, brushing over your skin in a way that feels grounding and peaceful. The distant hum of insects becomes a gentle background melody. Even the moon, pale and calm above, seems to watch over the moment with quiet serenity. The environment supports the story, not just as scenery, but as a companion to your sense of ease. As your breathing deepens, picture the earth beneath you, solid, ancient, steady. This same earth once bore witness to the birth of the giants, to the rise of Olympus, and to the cosmic tension that simmered long before the first spark of conflict. The land itself remembers, and tonight it offers that memory to you in the gentlest way. This peaceful beginning exists to prepare your mind for a journey across mythic ages. The Gigantomachy is not just a story of war. It is a story of balance, of the old giving way to the new, of earth and sky seeking harmony after ages of imbalance. But before these forces collide, there must be calm. There must be silence. There must be space for the ancient world to breathe, for the universe to take its place in the story. Allow your thoughts to slow just slightly. Let the tension of the day dissolve, the way mist fades under the morning sun. Here, in the quiet of this mythic night, there is no need to think ahead. You are simply present, listening, imagining, drifting gently deeper into a story that has waited millennia to be retold in a serene and soothing form. The stars overhead shimmer a little brighter now, as though welcoming your attention. Each one is like a small lantern hanging in the sky, illuminating the path into the ancient past. You don't need to follow them actively. They guide you effortlessly, inviting you to slip further into this tranquil narrative. The universe opens slowly, like the petals of a nocturnal flower responding to moonlight. The beginning of the Gigantomachy lies ahead, but not yet. First, you are meant to settle into the atmosphere of the myth, to feel the weight of ages, the calm before ancient forces awaken, the whispered promise that something grand and timeless is drawing near. This moment is your threshold, a soft gateway into the full story. So relax into it. You are safe, unhurried, and welcomed by the gentle night of a world where gods and giants once moved beneath the heavens. The story begins not with thunder, not with conflict, but with stillness, an invitation to drift ever deeper into the myth that waits quietly beyond the horizon. Before the giants ever stirred beneath the surface of the earth, long before Olympus crowned the heavens or mortals walked across sunlit fields, there was only a quiet, shapeless presence. The ancient poets called it chaos. Not chaos as we understand today, not noise or confusion, but gentle, formless vastness. It was a silent expanse without edges, without direction, without light or darkness. It simply existed, and from that serene, undefined presence, the first seeds of creation began to drift into being like soft ripples across still water. Out of this deep timelessness arose Gaia, the earth. Not the earth as we imagine today with mountains and seas, but a calm, steady presence, a grounding force that offered structure to the drifting nothingness. She emerged not with violence or noise, but with a quiet completeness, as though she had been waiting patiently beneath the veil of chaos. Her presence brought a kind of warmth into the universe, a gentle promise of form and life. She was a comforting foundation upon which everything else would rest. With Gaia came another ancient being, Tartarus. Unlike the earth, Tartarus was not harsh or frightening here, but simply a vast and still underworld, an echo of depth beneath existence. In the mythology for sleep, Tartarus becomes less of a prison and more of a peaceful, distant cavern, a quiet reflection beneath Gaia's surface. Together, they form the first balance, above and below, light and depth, presence and echo. Soon after, Eros emerged, not the playful god of later stories, but a soft, luminous force of attraction. Eros in this early age was a gentle pull that brought all things together. He was the quiet harmony that encouraged creation to unfold slowly and naturally. Where chaos had been stillness, Eros was the first movement, a subtle guiding energy that allowed the universe to blossom. As Gaia settled into her new existence, she shaped herself into plains and valleys, into gentle hills and wide open spaces. The early earth was calm and quiet, more like a soft breathing presence than a world of storms or mountains. In this peaceful beginning, Gaia felt the stillness of her own being and began to bring forth others, not out of restlessness, but out of deep, steady creation. She gave birth first to Uranus, the sky. Uranus unfolded above her like a vast dome of stars, clear and pure, a blanket of shimmering night that draped itself lovingly over Gaia. He was expansive and calm, stretching endlessly, offering the first true sense of height and wonder. Together, Gaia and Uranus formed one of the first cosmic pairings. Earth and sky, groundedness and possibility. Under this new sky, the early universe found its rhythm. Days and nights were not yet defined, but there was a soft alternation of brightness and dimness, like the gentle rise and fall of breath. The world felt young and open, waiting for the next forms of life to emerge. From Gaia and Uranus came the Titans, 12 ancient beings whose presence shaped the early cosmos. These Titans were not yet rulers or rivals. In this peaceful telling, they were more like immense, serene forces of nature. Oceanus flowed endlessly around the limits of the world, a calm circle of watery presence. Hyperion gave off a warm radiance, a suggestion of the light that would one day become the sun. Thea and Phoebe held quiet, luminous roles, glimmering softly like celestial reflections. Each Titan contributed something essential to the growing structure of the cosmos. Cronus, another Titan, moved slowly and methodically, like the steady passing of time itself. Though he would later become known for violence and conflict, here in the early ages he simply represented the gradual unfolding of the universe. Patient, inevitable, unhurried. As the Titans grew into their roles, Gaia continued shaping the world with peaceful intention. She brought forth the mountains, which rose gently like the slow lifting of ancient shoulders. She birthed the sea, whose waves rolled softly, echoing the calm rhythm of creation. She created the deep forests, whose branches whispered quietly in the early winds. Every feature of the earth came into being with a soothing, effortless grace. But beneath these gentle creations, something else stirred within Gaia, a memory, perhaps, of chaos, a reminder of the primordial depths. From these deeper parts of her nature emerged the Cyclopes and the Cenomans. In many versions, they are portrayed as monstrous beings, but in this softer retelling they are simply powerful, misunderstood shapes of creation. The Cyclopes shone with a single, calm eye full of focus and clarity. The Cenomans held the essence of abundance and capability, their many hands symbolic rather than frightening. Uranus, the sky, however, did not embrace these deeper children. His reaction was not loud or angry, but the kind of quiet rejection that creates an invisible distance. He pushed them back into Gaia's depths, into the underworld of Tartarus, thinking that only the graceful Titans belonged in the open world above. Gaia felt this rejection deeply, not with fury, but with a slow, growing ache, an ancient sorrow that would later shape the fate of the cosmos. She was the earth, the mother of all things, and she knew that every part of her creation had purpose. This quiet tension between Gaia and Uranus began as a whisper, barely noticeable, but it would eventually give rise to events far greater than either of them could have imagined. For now, though, the early ages drifted on in calm cycles. The Titans grew in both presence and identity. The seas deepened, the sky glittered with early constellations, tiny sparks of light spreading gently across the heavens. The earth's surface warmed and cooled in soft rhythms, shaped by forces older than memory. And through it all, Gaia continued to carry the weight of her unspoken grief. The Titans, though powerful, could not ease it. Uranus, though vast, could not understand it. The quiet pain of a mother whose creations were not embraced began to form a subtle tension within the very fabric of the world. This tension did not roar or crack the earth. It simply lingered, patient and steady, like a seed beneath the soil. It would eventually lead to the rise of Cronus, the fall of Uranus, and the great Titanomachy. And after that conflict, it would stir again, giving birth to the giants, children not of peace, but of sorrow and imbalance. But that time had not yet come. In these earliest ages, creation was still unfolding like a slow dawn. The cosmos was young, gentle, and full of potential. And from the soft interplay of earth and sky, of harmony and imbalance, of love and quiet hurt, the foundation was laid for the story that would one day become the Gigantomachy. For now, the universe rested in the calm of its beginning, a beginning shaped by forces older than the gods themselves. The ancient world breathed in silence, unaware that the seeds of future battles were already resting deep beneath its peaceful surface. Long after the world settled from the earliest ages of creation, and long after the Titans had risen to their places among the heavens, a quiet heaviness began to gather within Gaia, the ancient earth. She had witnessed countless eras unfold, some peaceful, some turbulent, but the sorrow she carried lingered deeply, like a slow echo that never quite faded. Her grief did not arrive suddenly. It grew quietly, like shadows lengthening at dusk, soft but steady, shaped by memories of pain she had never fully released. That sorrow began in the ages when Uranus, the sky, rejected some of her earliest children. The Cyclopes and the Cenomans were born from her as naturally as mountains and seas, yet they had been pushed into the depths simply because their forms did not mirror the beauty of the Titans. Gaia's heart had ached then, though she did not speak of it. She remained patient, as earth must always be, bearing the weight of creation in silence. But wounds carried for too long have a way of transforming, and even the gentlest being can feel the burden of sadness stretching across eternity. Later, when the Titanomachy erupted, the great war between the Titans and the gods of Olympus, another layer of sorrow settled over her. She had not wished for conflict, but conflict had come nonetheless, sweeping across the world like a storm that could not be halted. Gaia watched as her Titan children fell one by one, overthrown by Zeus and his siblings. Their defeat was not surprising. Time itself had been shifting toward a new age. But as the Titans were cast down into Tartarus, imprisoned in the deepest reaches of the earth, she felt the ache sharpen again. These were her children, too. Their cries, swallowed by the depths, trembled through her being. Though Zeus and the new Olympian order established stability across the heavens, Gaia could not shake the echo of her grief. She supported the new world. They were still her children, and she loved them, but she felt the imbalance between past and present, between those who ruled above and those who suffered below. Gaia was vast. She felt everything. She held the weight of mountains, the pressure of oceans, the growth of forests, and the breath of the winds. But beneath all of it, she also held memories that did not rest easily. Time passed, soft and subtle. The world quieted after the Titanomachy. The Olympians established peace across the cosmos, and mortals would eventually rise, learning to build their lives upon the calm earth Gaia provided. Yet deep below, in chambers of stone and shadow, the imprisoned Titans stirred in their heavy silence, an echo Gaia could never fully ignore. Their suffering vibrated through her core, and though she tried to remain steady, it weighed on her more heavily with each passing century. This grief, this ancient tension, did not erupt like a storm. Instead, it gathered inside Gaia slowly, like pressure building deep beneath the crust of the world. She felt her heart stretch between loyalty to her new divine children above and the pain of those trapped below. She felt the imbalance of the universe pressing against her, asking to be corrected, yet offering no clear path toward harmony. In this soft retelling, Gaia's emotions are not violent or vengeful. They are deep, ancient, and quiet, carried through millennia like a whisper beneath the soil. She wanted equilibrium. She wanted peace. She wanted all her creations to have a place where they belonged, without rejection, without imprisonment, without forced silence. But creation never unfolds perfectly, and even the earth herself must sometimes express what she has held inside for too long. One day, or rather, one era, for time in the age of myths cannot be measured by ordinary days, Gaia felt her sorrow solidify into a new form. It did not arrive with thunder. It did not appear with fire or trembling earthquakes. Instead, it grew within her like seeds nurtured by grief. And from those seeds emerged beings of immense presence, shaped from the raw depths of the earth rather than the gentleness of her surface. These were the giants, creatures born not from chaos nor from harmony, but from Gaia's accumulated pain after ages of cosmic imbalance. The giants emerged not as monsters, but as vast symbols of the earth's restless heart. Their forms were immense, towering, powerful. Some myths describe them with serpentine legs, others with limbs like tree trunks and voices like rolling stone. But in the sleep-friendly telling, imagine them as monumental spirits rising slowly from the soil, quiet expressions of ancient emotion taking physical shape. They carried with them the strength of mountains, the endurance of stone, and the relentless persistence of nature itself. They were born not from malice, but from Gaia's longing to release what she had held within her for too long. Each giant reflected a different aspect of her hidden depths. One rose from volcanic heat, embodying pressure and unrest. Another rose from thick forests, filled with the stubborn vitality of roots pushing through soil. Others emerged from cliffs and caverns, shaped by shadows and old memories. They were children of Earth, but unlike the Titans who represented fixed cosmic forces, the giants embodied raw, untamed energy, wild, unpredictable, and full of unresolved emotion. Among them were figures who would one day be known by name across mythology: Alcyoneus, whose strength was bound to the land on which he stood; Porphyrion, immense and fierce, born from Gaia's deepest rage; Enceladus, whose spirit carried the rumbling force of shifting tectonic plates. And yet, even these great beings began quietly. They did not rise with the intention of war. They simply existed, new and immense, awakening to a world that trembled slightly beneath their presence. Gaia did not command them immediately. She did not whisper vengeance into their ears or encourage rebellion. She simply released them into existence, allowing the universe to adjust around them. But existence itself can reshape destiny. The sight of the Titans bound in Tartarus, restricted eternally within Gaia's own body, stirred emotions within the giants. They sensed their mother's sorrow. They felt her imbalance. And though it was never their purpose to seek destruction, their very presence challenged a new cosmic order that Zeus had worked so hard to establish. Gaia watched as the giants grew in strength and awareness. She saw the way their immense forms shifted landscapes, the way mountains trembled slightly when they moved, the way forests sighed deeply when they passed through. They were not like the Titans. They were not like the Olympians. They were something new, ancient yet young, timeless yet wild. It was only a matter of time before they would collide with Olympus. Yet in this quiet moment of their beginning, the world remained still. Gaia allowed herself a moment of release, a breath after ages of grief held too tightly. The giants were her expression, her unspoken emotions finding form in the world. And though she could not foresee every consequence, she felt relief in the simple truth that her sorrow no longer remained buried within her. From this deep place of emotion, the story of the Gigantomachy began, not with war, but with the quiet birth of beings shaped by the Earth's ancient heart. In them, Gaia's grief finally had a voice in the universe, still calm for now, waited for the echo of that voice to reach the heavens.
The giants did not rise all at once, nor did they emerge with noise or fury. They surfaced gradually, like great shapes forming beneath a slow-moving mist. At first, the world only felt a subtle shift, small tremors humming through the soil, faint vibrations whispered beneath the roots of ancient trees. The sky did not flash, the seas did not roar. Instead, the earth exhaled quietly, releasing the vast beings that had grown within her depths for ages. What stepped into the world were not simply creatures of strength, but living echoes of pressures that had shaped the land since the dawn of creation. Their forms towered skyward, immense yet somehow graceful in the way mountains can seem serene despite their tremendous weight. Some rose from volcanic plains, their bodies warm with a lingering glow of magma, as though they were sculpted from molten stone. Others emerged from deep forests, their limbs thick and rooted like ancient trees. Still others appeared at the edges of cliffs, shaped by wind and shadow, their silhouettes merging seamlessly with the land around them. The giants were not uniform in shape or presence. Each embodied a different aspect of the Earth's personality. One might carry the calm endurance of a granite ridge, unmoving and patient. Another might hold the restless energy of shifting plates beneath the crust. A third might shimmer faintly with mineral light, as if born from crystals growing quietly beneath mountains. Their diversity made them both awe-inspiring and elusive, for no two giants reflected the same emotion or story within Gaia. One of the first to awaken was Alcyoneus. He rose with the stillness of a dawn mountain, his form vast enough to blend with the horizon. His presence was heavy yet grounded, connected to the land in a way that made the earth beneath him steady and strong. Wherever he stepped, the soil seemed to hum with life. His power was not loud. It was embedded in the very ground, in the quiet certainty of bedrock that has endured for millennia. Unlike other giants who might have reached for the sky, Alcyoneus remained close to the earth, moving slowly, as though listening to something deep below the surface. Porphyrion emerged differently. He rose with a quiet intensity that subtly changed the air around him. His movements carried the energy of an approaching storm, not violent, but filled with potential. His presence seemed to draw from the tension between earth and sky, a tension that had brewed within Gaia herself. He towered even above other giants, and though he did not roar or rage, there was a steady, simmering heat within him, like magma waiting beneath stone. Enceladus awakened beneath a cover of shifting stones. At his birth, the ground quivered gently, as if turning in its sleep. His form carried the essence of tectonic movement, deep and powerful. He moved with purpose, his steps echoing through valleys and across plains. If Alcyoneus was a quiet strength of rooted land, Enceladus was the slow, ancient movement of continents drifting across the ages. He seemed to listen to the heartbeat of the planet, a steady pulse that only beings shaped from Earth's depths could hear. Though these three became the most known, countless other giants followed. Some emerged near the coasts, their forms sculpted from coral, stone, and salt-laced winds. Others rose in quiet deserts, their bodies shaped by sand and time, their silhouettes tall and calm against star-filled skies. A few appeared in glacial regions, their forms marked by cold, ancient stillness. They reflected the quiet patience of ice that holds entire ages within its depths. Despite their immense size and power, the giants began their existence in a state of surprising calm. They did not awaken with anger. They did not seek conflict with gods or mortals. They simply emerged into a world that had changed while they slept inside Gaia. They walked across landscapes with curiosity, leaving deep impressions in the soil that soon filled with water or sprouted new life. Birds flew cautiously around them, their wings fluttering near the giants' towering forms.
Even the wind shifted gently as they passed, adjusting to the presence of beings who seemed to merge with nature itself. The world adapted to them slowly. Mountains resonated faintly when they moved. Forests parted silently as they walked through. Oceans bowed their surfaces like gentle tides greeting a distant moon. The giants were young, but their bodies held memories older than Olympus. Memories from when Gaia had shaped the first stones, the first rivers, the first forests. Though peaceful in their awakening, they could not ignore the faint echo of sorrow within the earth. It pulsed through them, a quiet reminder of why they had been born. They felt Gaia's pain like a trembling thread woven through their being, soft but constant. It was not a call to war. It was simply a reminder of unfinished emotions, unresolved stories, and a longing that stretched back to the imprisonment of the Titans. The giants walked the world absorbing its textures, its moods, its quiet beauty. Many of them rested in vast open plains where the wind brushed gently against their forms. Others sat upon mountains, gazing silently at the horizon, their large eyes reflecting the sky. A few stood in the ocean's shallows, letting waves lap against their legs. They were discovering the world in which they now existed, a world shaped by gods who had not yet acknowledged their presence. Even though Olympus watched the realm below, the gods saw the giants only from afar at first. They appeared as moving shapes, large but not threatening, drifting like living landscapes. Zeus and the other Olympians assumed they were simply another set of earth-born beings, similar to Titans but less refined. The gods paid little attention, believing their rule secure and the world stable after the Gigantomachy. To them, the giants seemed harmless, slow, quiet, and rooted. Yet the giants were not merely wandering. They were growing. Their awareness deepened, and with it came the understanding of their origin. They sensed the Titans suffering in Tartarus. They felt the pressure of the underworld's weight, the echo of the past conflict, the imbalance within Gaia that had given them form. The sorrow that birthed them whispered like an underground river flowing beneath their consciousness. They knew they were connected to something ancient and unresolved. Still, the giants did not react with haste. They moved through the world with patience, carrying their immense bodies across valleys and coastlines. They were observing, learning, absorbing. They felt the pull of the sky above, the pulse of the earth below, the quiet hum of life around them. Their connection to Gaia grew stronger with each passing moment, and her emotions became their compass. Some giants traveled in pairs, communicating through slow, rumbling vibrations that passed through the ground. Others remained solitary, preferring the stillness of distant mountain ranges or the shade of deep forests. They existed in harmony with the world, blending into the natural cycles of day and night, season and change. But in their growing awareness, something else began to stir, a subtle recognition of the gods who ruled above. The giants did not resent them, not at first, but they felt the imbalance. They sensed dominance without harmony, authority without acknowledgement of the earth's suffering. It was not anger that grew within them, but understanding, a realization that the story of the cosmos was not finished, and that they, born from Gaia's ancient heart, were meant to play a role in the next chapters of creation. For now, though, the world remained quiet. The giants continued their slow, thoughtful exploration of the land, newly formed yet carrying the weight of eternity. They did not seek conflict, but they stood ready, calm, immense, and connected to the earth itself. The horizon stretched before them, hinting at futures still hidden beyond the soft glow of evening light. High above the restless stirrings of the earth, Mount Olympus stood serene and unshakable, its peaks brushing the clouds as if in quiet conversation with the heavens. In the calm of early evening, when the sun's last amber rays softened into twilight, the mountain seemed to breathe gently, a living presence both distant and comforting. Its slopes were wrapped in mist that drifted like slow-moving rivers of silver, and the air was fragrant with pine and wildflowers that thrived in a thin, sacred atmosphere. There was a rhythm here, a gentle order that contrasted with the restless energy slowly growing in the world below. The Olympian gods moved through this tranquil space with measured grace, each presence resonating quietly with its own essence. Zeus, the king of the gods, sat upon a marble throne carved into the mountain itself, his form calm yet commanding. He was not yet aware of the subtle tremors beneath the earth, but even in stillness, there was wisdom in his gaze. He listened to the winds and clouds as they whispered across the peaks, perceiving the faintest shifts in the balance of the cosmos. Though he wielded thunder and lightning, in this moment his power was more gentle observation than overt force, a patient presence surveying the harmony of his domain. Athena, the goddess of wisdom and strategy, moved along the mountain terraces with quiet precision. Her eyes, keen yet serene, traced patterns across the valleys and distant hills, imagining not conflict, but the alignment of order and knowledge. In her hand rested a small, unadorned spear, not for war at this time, but as a symbol of thought and foresight. Her mind wandered across possibilities, contemplating how each force of the world fit into the greater tapestry of existence. The giants were not yet known to the Olympians, yet Athena's awareness was such that she might sense, even faintly, the coming stirrings beneath Gaia's surface. Nearby, Apollo walked with slow, melodic step, his golden hair catching the last sunlight and reflecting it softly across the mists. He carried with him the essence of the sun, a warmth that filled the air around him and touched the leaves of trees far below. With every step, his presence seemed to awaken quiet harmonies in the natural world, encouraging flowers to bloom slightly brighter, streams to glimmer more gently, and birds to chirp their notes in a languid, soothing rhythm. Artemis, his twin sister, moved beside him with equal calm, embodying the cool serenity of moonlight and shadow. Together, they formed a balance of day and night, warmth and cool, light and calm vigilance. Hestia, goddess of hearth and home, remained near the lower terraces of Olympus, tending to small flames that glowed softly in carved niches of the mountain rock. Her presence was quiet, nurturing and grounding, an anchor of stability amidst the calm yet inevitable stirrings of future events. From these fires came not smoke but a gentle warmth, a reminder that even in the heights of divine power, simplicity and care held their own significance. Hephaestus moved with a measured, deliberate energy through hidden workshops carved into mountain, the faint clink of tools against metal barely audible like a distant heartbeat. Even in the midst of creation, his actions were calm and purposeful. He shaped and formed instruments and minor works for the gods, preparing not for battle but for possibility, ensuring that every element of Olympus could function in harmony if ever challenged. The soft rhythm of his labor blended seamlessly with the wind and the quiet calls of distant birds. Dionysus wandered along quiet pathways, his presence bringing subtle life to flowers and vines that crept across the terraces. Though often associated with revelry, in these early moments he moved slowly, observing, listening, and aligning himself with the natural rhythms that surrounded Olympus. Even here, he understood that power could be gentle, that influence need not roar to shape the world. The mountain itself seemed aware of its inhabitants. Peaks rose and fell subtly beneath the footfalls of the gods. Clouds wrapped around them like delicate veils. Light filtered through mists and leaves in soft patterns, illuminating marble halls and carved terraces without harsh glare. Birds sang low and melodic songs, and the occasional deer or mountain goat wandered near the edges, unconcerned by the divine presence but part of the overall serenity. Every element of Olympus seemed alive, yet subdued, tuned to the rhythm of calm observation and gentle oversight. Even as the Olympians enjoyed this rare moment of quiet, the distant lands below moved with their own rhythm. Valleys whispered with wind, rivers murmured softly as they traced paths through the earth, and forests swayed with the subtle movements of unseen creatures. The world beneath Olympus seemed almost to pause in respect for the mountain's stillness, unaware that great forces would soon rise from its deep foundation. It was a calm before the eventual storm, a fragile equilibrium held in the tension between heaven above and the restless earth below. In this peaceful tableau, the gods were not idle. Each of them engaged in their own forms of quiet preparation, aligning themselves with the rhythms of the universe rather than reacting to immediate threats. They did not yet need weapons, strategies, or thunderbolts. Their awareness stretched into the cosmos, sensing patterns in the stars and vibrations in the earth. They acted with patience, understanding that sometimes the most powerful actions were those that required observation, reflection, and careful timing. Even Zeus, whose presence could shake mountains and summon lightning, radiated calm, sensing the depth of Gaia beneath the surface. The interactions among the gods were equally gentle. Apollo might share a quiet word with Athena, discussing a subtle shift in the celestial alignment. Artemis would pause to point out a distant river glinting in the evening light, reminding the others of the beauty that must be preserved. Small gestures, subtle glances, and shared awareness created a sense of unity, an unspoken understanding that balance was central to their continued harmony. They existed in cooperation, not tension, observing not only each other but the world around them. As night descended fully, the light softened to a delicate silver, and stars began to appear, scattered like tiny lanterns across the velvet sky. The Olympians paused in their movements, gazing upward at constellations that had witnessed countless ages of change. The constellations, familiar and eternal, seemed to mirror the serene order of Olympus itself, guiding, steady and patient. There was an unspoken promise here that the mountain, its gods, and the heavens above would endure through what was to come, even if events far below would one day test their patience and wisdom. At this moment, Olympus was a sanctuary of quiet strength. It was a place of observation, reflection, and gentle order. The mountain and its gods embodied the calm that could only exist in the face of eternity, a stillness that was not empty but filled with awareness, patience, and understanding. In these rare, tranquil hours, the stage for the mist to come was set, and the mountain's inhabitants remained a serene presence, unshaken by the subtle tremors beginning to stir in the deep earth beneath them. Here, high above the mortal world and the sleeping forests, rivers, and valleys, the Olympians waited softly. They were unaware of the full scope of what lay beneath, yet their serene vigilance created the contrast that would define the coming tale. Mount Olympus remained a place of still beauty, a quiet beacon of divine presence, watching over the world with measured grace. As the restless whispers of the giants and the earth's sorrow continued to stir quietly far below. Even as Olympus rested in its serene heights, the earth continued to hum quietly beneath, carrying with it the soft echoes of the unrest that had been growing for ages. Gaia's sorrow and the giant awakening were subtle, almost imperceptible at first, but they began to weave patterns across the land that even the Olympians could not entirely ignore. While the gods maintained their tranquil order above, distant prophecies whispered through the cosmos, echoing faintly in the constellations, drifting on the winds, and stirring within the depths of Gaia herself. These prophecies spoke not in words, but in vibrations, in quiet current of energy that suggested a delicate balance was about to shift. It was during this calm era that the notion of mortal involvement first emerged. The gods, for all their wisdom and power, recognized that the coming challenge could not be faced by divine strength alone. Though immense and unyielding, they were part of a world that had shifted, one in which the giants represented not only force, but also an expression of Earth's ancient sorrow. They needed an ally, one whose presence would bridge the gap between mortal and divine, a being shaped by both realms. In time, this would point toward Heracles, a mortal yet extraordinary figure, destined to step quietly into the unfolding story. The idea of prophecy was not rigid or urgent. It flowed like a slow river, touching each of the gods' consciousness gently, like sunlight filtering through leaves. It spoke of balance and cooperation, of an entity that could walk among mortals yet carry the essence of Olympus within him. This knowledge did not arrive as a command, nor as a decree, but as a soft realization that guided thought and intention. In myth, prophecy often arrives with fanfare and urgency, yet here it was more subtle, a hushed guidance that hinted at the future without demanding immediate action. Gaia herself, in her quiet and steady way, seemed to know that mortal hands would play a role in restoring equilibrium. She did not speak. She did not act directly. Instead, her presence moved imperceptibly, nudging the energies of the world toward alignment. The giants, emerging from her depths, felt her sorrow and intent. They were aware in their own patient and unhurried manner that they were part of a larger cosmic plan. Their awareness was not driven by anger or rebellion yet. It was a gentle cognizance, like a seed absorbing sunlight without rushing toward growth. The Olympians, too, began to sense the significance of the mortal dimension, though they did so in quiet contemplation. Athena, with her steady wisdom, perceived the threads of fate stretching across realms, weaving mortals into divine affairs with subtle precision. Her gaze often lingered upon the earth below, imagining the ways in which a single human life could influence the course of the universe. Apollo, with his warmth and clarity, noticed the way sunlight touched certain places with gentle favor, hinting at the presence of someone destined to play a pivotal role. The idea was not yet clear, but the patterns were visible to those who observed patiently. In the world of mortals, life carried on with simple rhythms, villages tending to their crops, rivers flowing softly, winds rustling through quiet groves. These patterns were as important as the movements of gods and giants, for they formed the foundation upon which fate could act. In time, a child would be born, nurtured within this ordinary world, yet bearing the extraordinary essence necessary to fulfill the quiet prophecy. This child was Heracles, though his significance would not yet be realized, even by himself. In the soft unfolding of destiny, the extraordinary often appears wrapped in the ordinary, a gentle emergence that will one day reveal its importance. The gods understood this subtle truth intuitively. They did not intervene directly, nor did they impose their will harshly. Instead, they observed, allowed the threads to interweave, and guided gently when necessary. Zeus, the king, sat in quiet reflection, sensing the balance of forces, noting that mortal courage and resilience could complement divine power. Athena pondered strategies that were not immediately necessary, imagining potential collaborations between gods and mortals with calm deliberation. Even Dionysus, whose presence often brought life and subtle change to the world, moved through the forests and valleys softly, nurturing natural energies in ways that would later support the unfolding narrative. Prophecy, in this tranquil telling, functioned like a low, persistent current beneath the surface of life. It was not dramatic, not loud, but persistent, weaving through stars, rivers, mountains, and hearts. It flowed slowly toward convergence of mortal and divine, a gentle anticipation that the balance of the world might one day require both realms to act together. This quiet forewarning, carried across ages, created the calm tension that would later make the involvement of Heracles not surprising, but natural, an unfolding that seemed inevitable once one observed the slow rhythm of cosmic alignment. Gaia's sorrow and the giant's slow awakening had created a subtle imbalance, and the gods knew that even their immense powers would not suffice to correct it entirely. This realization did not provoke fear or agitation, but a patient understanding that the story required cooperation across levels of existence. Mortals and gods, earth and Olympus, sorrow and wisdom, all these forces would need to converge softly, harmoniously, in order to restore equilibrium. In myth, such collaborations often appear dramatic or urgent, but here they were quiet and reflective, like water slowly finding its way along the contours of the land. In this way, the stage was set for the gentle entrance of Heracles into the narrative. Though he had not yet been born, the threads of his destiny began to form, connecting him subtly to both Gaia and Olympus. The prophecy surrounding him whispered through the wind, glimmered faintly in the stars, and lingered softly in the rhythm of everyday life among mortals. It suggested that his presence would become essential, not because of immediate strength or action, but because of his unique ability to unite the human and divine, bridging realms in a way that even the gods recognized as necessary. Thus, in this quiet, reflective time, both the heavens and the earth seemed to pause, acknowledging the slow and inevitable march of fate. Gaia's sorrow remained beneath the surface. The giants moved with awareness, and the Olympians watched with patient consideration. The prophecy rested in the ether, awaiting the moment when mortal courage and divine strategy would intertwine, forming the calm but powerful force necessary to face what lay ahead. And in this soft anticipation, the universe prepared itself for the eventual awakening of Heracles, a mortal destined to step quietly into the dance between Earth, Olympus, and the giants themselves. As the giants continued their slow, deliberate exploration of the world, a subtle tension began to emerge. Though they had not been born from anger, nor had they yet sought conflict, the mere knowledge of their own strength and the injustice that had shaped their birth created an underlying pull within them. The earth itself whispered to the wind and the tremors beneath their massive feet, sharing the quiet memory of centuries past. Gaia's sorrow resonated within them like a low, steady hum, connecting them to a purpose they did not yet fully understand. They were aware of their existence, aware of the imbalance in the cosmos, and yet they remained patient, moving carefully, testing the contours of the land and learning the limits of their own power. Alcyoneus, ever grounded and connected to the soil beneath his feet, began to explore the wide plains where soft grasses stretched for miles, bowing gently under his enormous weight. Each step he took pressed deeply into the earth, leaving impressions that would last for generations. Rivers hesitated at his approach, diverting around his immense form as if acknowledging his presence. Despite his towering strength, his movements were slow, almost ceremonial, a dance of patience and observation rather than aggression. He felt the history of the land beneath him, from the formation of mountains to the secret growth of seeds, and he absorbed it with a quiet reverence. Porphyrion, on the other hand, carried a subtle tension within him. He wandered along high ridges and rocky escarpments, his gaze sweeping across horizons and valleys. While he did not roar or strike, there was a simmering potential energy within him, a latent force that could one day erupt if provoked. He felt the pull of the heavens, the distant presence of Olympus, and the gentle, almost imperceptible heartbeat of the world below. Unlike Alcyoneus, who was rooted to the soil, Porphyrion seemed attuned to the tension between earth and sky, sensing both the constraints and possibilities of the world he now inhabited. His awareness was careful and deliberate, a slow study of the balance of forces that had shaped his being. Enceladus emerged as a bridge between the extremes of patience and latent intensity. He moved across the landscapes of valleys and hills, his steps creating faint tremors that could be felt for miles. His presence was a reminder that the earth itself was alive, capable of subtle upheavals and monumental movements. He sensed the pulse of Gaia beneath him and the faint vibrations of the Titans imprisoned in Tartarus. Though he did not yet seek confrontation, he absorbed the memory of their struggle, the quiet sorrow of the earth, and the knowledge that the gods above maintained order in ways that ignored the hidden truths of creation. Enceladus carried this understanding as a steady awareness, a silent acknowledgement of his place in the unfolding story. Other giants moved across the world with similar care, each embodying a different aspect of Gaia's ancient sorrow and untamed potential. Some emerged near forests, their limbs merging with the trunks of trees, their presence blending with the dappled sunlight. These giants seemed almost part of the natural world, growing and moving in harmony with the rhythms of life. Others appeared along coasts and riverbanks, their forms shaped by water and stone, their movements creating gentle waves that reflected the soft light of the sun or moon. Each step, each gesture was deliberate, forming a pattern of interaction with the environment that was both powerful and serene. Despite their calm exploration, the giants could not escape the faint awareness of Olympus above. The mountain and its divine inhabitants represented stability and control, an unspoken hierarchy that challenged the giants' existence. Though the gods did not yet act, the giants could sense the distance and watchfulness, a presence that was invisible but undeniably real. This awareness did not provoke immediate hostility. Rather, it created a subtle tension, a quiet recognition that balance was at stake, and that their very emergence posed questions that had yet to be answered. In their explorations, the giants began to encounter the traces of earlier beings and events, the remnants of Titan battles, the faint scars of conflicts long past, and the echoes of magic that had been cast into the earth. They moved slowly through these areas, sensing the energy left behind, absorbing it without disrupting the natural harmony. It was as if the land itself whispered secrets to them, lessons learned from previous generations, and warnings of potential consequences of imbalance. The giants listened carefully, attuning themselves to the rhythm of the world, knowing that their strength required not only awareness but wisdom. Some giants found themselves drawn to the skies, standing on high peaks to watch the stars emerge one by one. Their gazes were not filled with envy or aggression, but with curiosity and reflection. They felt a quiet connection to the constellations, to the distant energies of the cosmos, and to the rhythmic pulse of the universe itself. These quiet moments allowed them to contemplate their own existence, the role of Gaia, and the implications of their awakening. Each giant, in these solitary reflections, began to understand that their power carried responsibility, and that patience was as important as strength. Interactions among the giants were similarly measured. Though capable of overwhelming force, they communicated through subtle movements, vibrations, and shared presence rather than speech. Their understanding of one another was intuitive, a quiet acknowledgement of the shared origin from Gaia's depths. They recognized that each of them embodied a different facet of the earth's memory and sorrow, and that together they represented a collective power that was immense yet restrained. In this way, the giants formed a network of awareness, connected not by competition, but by the recognition of their shared purpose and potential. The land itself seemed to respond to their movements, bending subtly to accommodate their presence. Trees swayed, rivers adjusted their courses, and even mountains seemed to shift imperceptibly, creating a landscape that reflected the quiet majesty of these ancient beings. Wildlife adapted as well, moving gracefully around the giants, sensing both their strength and their calm. The world beneath and around them became a living canvas, shaped by the interplay of immense forms and subtle energy, a reminder that power need not always manifest as violence to be profoundly influential. In these moments of quiet exploration, the story of the future began to crystallize. Though the giants had not yet clashed with Olympus, and though mortals were still far removed from their awareness, the stage for what would become the Gigantomachy was taking shape. The giant awareness of the earth, the imprisoned titans, and the distant gods created a tension that was gentle yet persistent, a calm precursor to events that would one day echo across the cosmos. Their patience, reflection, and measured movements served as preparation, both for themselves and for the world that would soon be affected by their awakening. By moving slowly, observing carefully, and absorbing the energies of the land, the giants established the foundation of their role in the universe. They were not yet warriors in the traditional sense. They were embodiments of potential, living expressions of ancient sorrow and untamed force. Their existence challenged the harmony of Olympus in a subtle, almost imperceptible way, demonstrating that balance is maintained not only through power but through awareness, patience, and respect for the intricate patterns of life. In this quiet unfolding, the giant's purpose was becoming clear, a gentle prelude to the monumental story that awaited them and the gods above. The awakening of the giants, though subtle, did not go entirely unnoticed by the Olympians. Though they remained in their serene heights on Mount Olympus, their senses were attuned to vibrations of the world below. Every shift in the soil, every soft tremor across plains and forests, resonated faintly within their consciousness. Zeus, seated upon his throne, felt a gentle stir beneath the earth, a quiet, insistent pressure that seemed both familiar and foreign. He did not immediately recognize the source, but the sensation carried a certain weight, a reminder of the earth's vast memory and the lingering presence of forces older than even the titans themselves. It was a hum beneath the surface, soft and persistent, calling for attention without urgency, whispering of change yet unseen. Athena, ever perceptive, sensed more than just vibrations. She felt the alignment of energy within the world, subtle currents shifting across valleys, mountains, and rivers. The pattern suggested beings moving with purpose, guided by something deeper than instinct. Though they were not yet dangerous, they carried a presence that could not be ignored. She considered the past, the Gigantomachy, the balance of power established by Zeus, and the delicate peace that had followed, and realized that the emergence of new forces born from the earth itself could tip that balance. In quiet thought, she began to trace strategies, imagining scenarios where both restraint and intervention might be necessary, preparing for possibilities that were not yet urgent but quietly inevitable. The rest of the Olympians, while perhaps less attuned to these undercurrents, also began to feel the subtle shifts. Apollo noticed the air itself carrying a different vibration, the warmth of sunlight interacting with the land in unfamiliar ways. Even Artemis, attuned to the moonlight and the rhythms of night, sensed the quiet stirrings of immense life moving across the terrain. These subtle cues created a soft tension within Olympus, a recognition that the world, though calm, was not entirely at rest. The gods did not panic. They merely observed, mindful of the need to understand before acting. Meanwhile, the giants moved slowly across the lands, their awareness deepening with each step. Alcyoneus wandered through wide plains, feeling the soft pull of gravity beneath him and sensing the subtle resonance of the earth's crust. He did not yet perceive Olympus as a threat, but the faint pulse of the mountain, the distant hum of divine energy, registered within him like a quiet signal. He paused often, listening to the rhythms of the world, feeling the intricate balance between life, stone, water, and air. Each movement he made was deliberate, measured, and respectful, as though he understood that his immense power must coexist with the fragile harmonies of the land. Porphyrion, less grounded than Alcyoneus, but equally aware, explored high ridges and cliffs, attuning himself to the tension between the earth and the sky. He noticed how clouds gathered differently in his presence, how winds shifted around his form, and how even the stars seemed to respond to the rhythm of his breathing. His awareness was keen, almost meditative, as if the mountain air itself whispered guidance. He did not seek conflict, but he was beginning to understand the latent potential within himself, the kind of energy that could one day challenge even the Olympians if not acknowledged and respected. Enceladus moved differently, closer to the hidden depths of the earth. He felt the imprisoned titans stirring faintly, their energy radiating through the rock and soil like a soft echo. Though he had not yet approached Tartarus, the very knowledge of their presence shaped his awareness. His movements were slow, careful, attuned to vibrations and currents beneath the surface. He absorbed these signals without aggression, sensing the lessons contained in the past, the fall of the titans, the patience of Gaia, and the inevitability of change. Each step became a meditation on power, restraint, and potential consequence. Other giants began to form patterns in their movements, almost unconsciously. Some gathered near rivers and lakes, feeling the flow of water, observing its shape and rhythm. Others paused in dense forests, sensing the life contained within leaves, soil, and roots, attuning themselves to cycles older than Olympus itself. Still others climbed mountains, observing the horizon, understanding the distance and reach of the divine world above. Together, their movements formed a subtle map of influence across the earth, a living network of presence and awareness that mirrored Gaia's own patience and enduring strength. Even as the Olympians observed from afar, they remained deliberate and measured. Zeus did not rush to act. He simply sensed, recorded, and waited. Athena considered possibilities and potential alliances, her mind quietly mapping strategies without urgency. Apollo and Artemis continued to monitor rhythms of day and night, subtly aligning the natural world with the careful observation of potential events. The gods understood that immediate action could disturb the fragile balance, so they chose vigilance over intervention. They would watch and assess, allowing the giants' movements to reveal their purpose and character. In this calm tension, the first hints of an eventual meeting between Olympus and the giants began to crystallize. Though separated by distance and scale, each side was becoming aware of the other, a silent recognition of potential interaction. The giants were not yet aggressive, nor were the gods alarmed. Instead, both were attuned to the subtle energy of the world, the push and pull of forces, the quiet resonance of power, and the necessity of careful observation. It was a prelude to understanding, a gentle awareness that would form the foundation of eventual strategy and confrontation. The land itself participated in this quiet drama. Valleys, rivers, forests, and mountains all seemed to respond to the giants' movements and the gods' awareness above. Trees swayed gently, rivers reflected light differently, and rocks seemed to hum softly underfoot. Even the wind carried a subtle message, shifting direction and tempo, passing quietly from one region to another. In these minute changes, both the giants and the gods perceived patterns and possibilities, reinforcing the idea that the world itself was a living, interconnected participant in the unfolding story. Thus, the stage was set. The giants moved deliberately, attuning themselves to the world and its currents, while the Olympians observed, patient and vigilant, preparing in quiet anticipation for the moment when subtle tension would grow into necessary action. Gaia's sorrow, the giant awakening, and Olympus' calm vigilance converged slowly across the landscape, creating a delicate balance of power and awareness. This was a time of quiet preparation, a moment in which understanding, observation, and subtle resonance shaped the future, laying the groundwork for the eventual clash that would become the Gigantomachy. The first hints of interaction between the giants and Olympus began with a subtle, almost imperceptible awareness. The Olympians, seated high upon their marble terraces, could feel the slow movement of immense forms across the earth below, vibrations passing to the soil and into the air. These were not urgent tremors, not violent disruptions, but gentle reminders of the living force that had emerged from Gaia's depths. Zeus, whose perception extended far beyond what mortals could imagine, sensed a presence that was patient yet immensely powerful, a weight pressing softly but insistently against the natural order. He did not react with alarm, for the vibrations carried no immediate threat. Instead, he studied them, tracing patterns in the gentle shift of energy and reflecting on their meaning. Athena, ever the strategist, began to map these subtle movements in her mind, observing how the giants spread across the land and interacted with the world around them. She noticed how Alcyoneus, with his grounded presence, seemed to harmonize with plains and rivers, his massive form moving with deliberate care, pressing into the soil without destroying it. Porphyrion explored the mountains and cliffs, alert to the tension between earth and sky, his awareness a quiet study of atmospheric balance. Enceladus, moving across hills and valleys, attuned himself to the hidden energy of the titans imprisoned in Tartarus. Each giant exhibited a different rhythm and focus, yet all were connected to the earth and to one another through an almost invisible network of understanding. Athena sensed that these patterns were not chaotic but deliberate, and she began considering the ways in which the gods might respond without disturbing the natural harmony. The other Olympians, though less strategic, observed with equal care. Apollo felt the subtle interplay of light and energy as the giants moved, noticing how sunlight reflected differently from their vast forms and how the air itself seemed to adjust to their presence. Artemis, moving silently across the moonlit terraces, sensed the quiet rhythm of their steps and the way the world bent gently to accommodate their existence. Even minor deities, spirits of rivers, winds, and forests, responded subtly to the giants, whispering messages through rustling leaves and the gentle flow of water. It was a network of awareness that extended far beyond Olympus itself, touching the earth and sky, blending mortal and divine perception in a soft symphony of observation. The giants, for their part, were unaware that they were being watched in such detail. They moved as if guided by Gaia's hand, aware of the rhythms of the world and the unspoken memory embedded in every stone, tree, and riverbed. Alcyoneus pressed into plains with slow reverence, feeling the heartbeat of the earth through every step, as if listening to a language older than time. Porphyrion climbed cliffs with quiet intensity, sensing the pull of the sky and the subtle pressure of air currents, his form blending the terrestrial and the celestial. Enceladus moved like a deep current beneath the land, his presence bridging the living surface and the hidden realms of the Titans, absorbing knowledge from every tremor and vibration. Each giant explored in his own way, discovering the contours of the earth while learning the limits and possibilities of his own strength. In their wanderings, the giants began to notice traces of life that had persisted through time, remnants of ancient battles, the subtle scars left by the fall of the Titans, and the enduring marks of Gaia's grief. These traces did not provoke anger. Rather, they inspired reflection. The giants understood that they were part of a continuum, a living link between the past and the present, between the earth's sorrow and the future's balance. Their awareness deepened, and with it came the sense that the world below and the mountain above were not separate but connected, each movement and presence influencing the other. Though calm in demeanor, the giants' growing awareness began to generate a quiet tension. The energy of their existence, combined with the latent strength within each being, created subtle waves that could be felt across distances. Rivers rippled slightly as they passed, trees bent in acknowledgement of their presence, and even the wind seemed to shift its course around their immense forms. The Olympians observed these subtle changes with measured attention, noting that while the giants had not yet acted aggressively, their very existence posed questions about balance, power, and cosmic order. The tension was not dramatic, but persistent, a quiet prelude to the events that would eventually unfold. At the same time, the gods considered the importance of restraint. Zeus understood that acting too soon, or with overt force, could disrupt the fragile harmony of Gaia and her creations. Athena reflected on the lessons of past conflicts, the Gigantomachy and the delicate aftermath, and concluded that careful observation was necessary before any action. Even Apollo and Artemis, though less concerned with strategy, felt the importance of timing, understanding that the giants' patience mirrored the Earth's own rhythm. The Olympians' calm vigilance contrasted with the giants' latent potential, creating a tension between restraint and emerging power that was quiet yet profoundly significant. In the forests and plains, the giants' movements began to intersect in subtle ways. Alcyoneus crossed a riverbank where another giant had been resting, their presence acknowledged through vibration and shared awareness rather than sound. Porphyrion steps along a rocky ridge resonated faintly with Enceladus' movements in a nearby valley, creating a rhythm that echoed Gaia's heartbeat. These interactions were silent, almost imperceptible, yet they reflected an emerging network of understanding among the giants. They were connected not only to Gaia and the world, but to one another, forming an awareness that would later define their collective strength and purpose. Even as this quiet awareness grew, mortals remained unaware of the forces moving across the land. Villagers tended crops, rivers flowed, and winds whispered through forests, oblivious to the subtle presence of immense beings shaping the land beneath their feet. The world itself seemed to pause, observing with patience, holding its breath in anticipation of the larger events to come. The giants' slow exploration, the Olympians' watchful vigilance, and the Earth's enduring presence created a delicate equilibrium, a soft tension that hinted at the coming clash without disturbing the calm of the present. Thus, in this quiet unfolding, the stage for future encounters was established. The giants moved with patience, absorbing the world in one another's presence, while Olympus observed with calm attention, sensing the subtle shifts that would eventually demand action. Gaia's sorrow and the latent power within the giants created an undercurrent that could no longer be ignored, a quiet pulse beneath the earth that intertwined with the calm vigilance of the gods above. In these moments, the delicate prelude to Gigantomachy was complete, a gentle and measured preparation for the story that would one day sweep across both heaven and earth. The giants, in their slow and deliberate awakening, began to realize that their existence was not entirely solitary. As they wandered through valleys, forests, and mountains, they felt subtle vibrations in the ground that suggested other beings of immense power were near. These vibrations were not like the soft hum of the earth beneath Alcyoneus' steps or the faint pulses that Enceladus felt from Tartarus. They carried a different weight, a mixture of latent energy and quiet authority, resonating from heights unseen but deeply perceptible. In these moments, the giants began to sense that Olympus, distant yet undeniable, was aware of their presence. This recognition did not provoke fear, nor did it incite immediate aggression. Instead, it created a cautious awareness, a slow acknowledgement that the balance of the world extended beyond the lands they could touch. Alcyoneus moved with deliberate patience through open plains, each step pressing deeply into the soil. He could feel the subtle responses of the earth beneath him, vibrations that suggested both life and latent power. The grasses bent under his presence. Streams diverted quietly, and the animals observed from a safe distance, unafraid but wary. The rhythm of the world adjusted to him as it had to all giants, acknowledging their size and strength without resistance. And yet, within him stirred a growing awareness that these movements, as natural and deliberate as they were, had consequences that extended beyond the immediate surroundings. Olympus' gaze, though distant, seemed to reach subtly into his awareness, a reminder that patience alone would not define their role in the unfolding story. Porphyrion, more attuned to the tension between earth and sky, began to notice the faint, persistent currents of energy above him. Winds shifted in unusual ways. Clouds moved with intentional patterns, and lightning, though dormant, seemed to flicker with awareness of his presence. He climbed jagged cliffs and observed vast horizons, sensing the immensity of both his own potential and the distance separating him from Olympus. The realization that forces existed which could match his strength or even surpass it prompted reflection rather than aggression. Porphyrion began to understand the delicate interplay between power and strategy, the quiet patience required to measure not only his own movements, but those of beings whose gaze extended from the heavens. Enceladus, moving across valleys and hills, felt the vibrations of the imprisoned titans below the earth. Their soft hums carried history, sorrow, and untapped energy, filling him with a sense of responsibility he could not yet fully articulate. Though the titans were distant and constrained, their presence created subtle echoes within the world above, resonating faintly with the Olympians' watchful awareness. Enceladus sensed that their eventual role might be significant in the shaping of his own actions and the decisions of his fellow giants. In quiet moments, he paused to consider the layers of existence, realizing that the surface world, the underworld, and Olympus above were interwoven, each dependent upon subtle patience and understanding. The smaller giants, though less individually notable, contributed to the growing awareness of the world around them. They moved in forests, along rivers, and across desolate plains, touching every corner of Gaia's domain with slow reverence. Their massive forms shaped the land subtly, pressing impressions into the soil, bending reeds and branches, and leaving behind traces that will remain for centuries. Even without immediate confrontation, their collective presence began to create an invisible web of energy, a network of awareness connecting them to each other, to the earth, and to Olympus. This growing consciousness, silent yet persistent, reflected the emerging importance of cooperation, observation, and understanding within their ranks. As the giants moved, the world itself seemed to respond. Trees swayed with subtle acknowledgement, rivers rippled gently, and mountains exhaled as though aware of the weight and presence of the beings moving across their surfaces. Animals observed cautiously, yet none fled in panic. Instead, they adapted to the rhythm created by the giants, learning to exist within the new patterns of influence. Even the air shifted, carrying a delicate resonance that hinted at the slow, inevitable interaction between earthborn beings and the distant Olympians. This silent harmony, though fragile, established the baseline for the tension that would one day culminate in dramatic events. The Olympians continued to observe, not from concern but from deliberate awareness. Zeus, in particular, remained patient, feeling the subtle pressure of the giant's movements but refraining from immediate action. He understood that a premature display of power could disturb the fragile balance that had been maintained since the Gigantomachy. Athena continued her quiet study, mapping the patterns of the giant's steps and anticipating their understanding of both the earth and the distant Olympus. Apollo and Artemis, through observation of the sun and moon, tracked the subtle shifts in energy and light, noting how each giant interacted with the natural world around them. Even minor spirits, often unnoticed by mortals, contributed to this web of observation, their subtle actions amplifying connections between Olympus, Gaia, and the giants themselves. In the midst of this awareness, the giants began to interact with one another in subtle ways. Alcyoneus, moving through open plains, felt the vibrations of another giant crossing a distant forest. The awareness was silent yet immediate, communicated through the earth itself rather than speech. Porphyrion, perched on a cliff overlooking a valley, noticed Enceladus moving below, feeling the resonance of his steps and the rhythm of his thought. These interactions, gentle yet profound, allowed the giants to develop a shared consciousness, a collective understanding of the balance and potential of their own existence. It was a network of presence and energy that mirrored Gaia's own enduring patience, connecting the giants in ways that were invisible to mortals but perceptible to the attentive Olympians. Through these movements and connections, the giants began to sense the inevitability of their eventual purpose. Their power was immense, their awareness growing, and yet they understood that strength alone would not determine the course of events. Observation, patience, and understanding would shape their role as much as any action. The Olympians, watching quietly from above, recognized the same truth. They understood that the slow, deliberate emergence of the giants created a balance of potential energy, a tension that had not yet erupted but existed as a persistent undercurrent, ready to define the outcome of the world's story. In this way, the stage was set not with overt conflict or immediate struggle, but with awareness, reflection, and anticipation. The giants moved across the earth, attuning themselves to each other, the land, and the faint presence of Olympus above. The gods observed, patient and vigilant, allowing patterns to emerge and connections to form. Gaia's sorrow, the latent energy of the giants, and the quiet vigilance of Olympus intertwined to create a delicate equilibrium, a gentle prelude to the eventual confrontation that would become the Gigantomachy. The tension was silent, almost imperceptible, yet it carried the weight of destiny, preparing both Earth and Olympus for the unfolding story that would ripple across time and space. The quiet tension that had been building between the giants and Olympus began to evolve into a subtler form of awareness, one that involved not only observation but also contemplation. The Olympians, perched on the terraces of Mount Olympus, sensed that the time of passive vigilance might gradually transition into something more active, though not necessarily violent. Zeus, whose perception spanned the entirety of the heavens and the earth below, noticed the careful patterns in which the giants moved. Each step was deliberate, measured, and harmonized with the natural world, revealing a rhythm that suggested intelligence, intention, and patience. He observed without haste, understanding that premature action might disrupt the fragile balance that had been established since the Gigantomachy. Athena's mind worked quietly, weaving together the impressions she gathered from both the movements of the giants and the current of energy flowing through the earth. She observed Alcyoneus' careful navigation of plains and rivers, the way his enormous form pressed into soil without tearing apart, and how the vegetation seemed to adjust his presence, bending gently under his weight. Porphyrion's exploration of cliffs and mountains caught her attention as well. He sensed the subtle tension in Porphyrion's every movement, the measured balance between the pull of the sky and the firm grounding of the earth beneath him. Athena considered these behaviors thoughtfully, noting that each giant, though immense and powerful, carried within him a capacity for restraint and an awareness of the larger world, qualities that could influence the unfolding events in ways more nuanced than raw force. Enceladus, whose awareness stretched deeper into the earth, continued to move across hills and valleys with careful attentiveness to the faint tremors of the imprisoned titans. These subtle vibrations were not merely echoes of past events. They carried information, a record of the titans' knowledge, sorrow, and power, waiting to be interpreted. Enceladus absorbed these signals slowly, letting them guide his movements and inform his understanding of his own place in the world. Though he did not yet seek confrontation, He began to appreciate the delicate relationships between power, patience, and consequence. His presence bridged the surface world and the hidden depth of the earth, a living connection between the past and the present, between restraint and potential eruption. Even the smaller giants contributed to this quiet awareness. They wandered through forests, alongside rivers, and across wide open plains, leaving impressions on a land that reflected their careful movements and latent strength. Trees bent and swayed in response to their steps. Streams adjusted their flow to accommodate their massive forms, and wildlife observed with cautious curiosity. This subtle interplay between the giants and their environment created an invisible network of presence and energy, a delicate pattern that both Olympus and the earth itself could perceive. It was as if the land were alive in a way that acknowledged the giant's strength, yet guided it gently, reminding them that power carried responsibility. The Olympians, in turn, recognized the importance of restraint and timing. Zeus understood that while the giants were not yet threats in the traditional sense, the mere magnitude of their presence could disrupt balance if not acknowledged thoughtfully. Athena continued to plan, imagining potential strategies and scenarios, but without rushing to impose her will. Apollo and Artemis maintained their observation of the natural world, tracking the subtle effects of the giants' movements on sunlight, moonlight, and the rhythms of life. Even minor spirits, often unnoticed by mortals, acted as subtle messengers, transmitting whispers of change and energy that contributed to the overall awareness within Olympus. This web of perception allowed the gods to monitor developments without forcing action prematurely, ensuring that understanding would precede intervention. The giants, in their quiet wanderings, began to sense the invisible threads connecting them to one another and to the world around them. Alcyoneus felt vibrations from Porphyrion as he traversed distant cliffs, subtle resonances that spoke of shared awareness rather than verbal communication. Enceladus, moving through valleys, perceived faint echoes of energy from other giants, forming a network of understanding that mirrored the interconnectedness of Gaia herself. These interactions, imperceptible to the human eye, allowed the giants to coordinate their exploration of the world, developing a sense of unity without words, a collective consciousness born from patience, observation, and the recognition of shared origin. The land itself seemed to respond to the presence of the giants, accommodating their immense forms without resistance. Trees adjusted their growth subtly, bending in ways that softened the impact of each step. Rivers shifted their flow imperceptibly, creating gentle currents that worked with the giants' passage rather than against it. Even mountains seemed to inhale and exhale with the rhythm of their movements, a subtle acknowledgement of the immense forces that moved across them. Wildlife adapted as well, maintaining an awareness that balanced caution with curiosity. The world, in all its quiet complexity, participated in the unfolding story, offering subtle guidance, feedback, and influence. As the giants explored and the Olympians observed, a silent communication began to emerge between the two. The gods felt the giants' restraint, their measured awareness of the world and of one another. The giants, though unaware of the exact nature of the divine gaze, felt the subtle pressure of Olympus' presence in the air, in the shifting clouds, and in the faint energy that coursed through the environment. There was a growing understanding that interaction might one day be necessary, but that for now, patience and observation were paramount. The tension between potential confrontation and peaceful coexistence created a delicate equilibrium, a quiet anticipation of events yet to come. Mortals, distant from this interplay, continued their lives with little awareness of the forces moving across the land and sky. Villages went about their routines, rivers flowed in familiar paths, and winds whispered through forests and plains, carrying news of subtle shifts in energy. In a way, the presence of humans contributed to balance, their ordinary lives forming a background rhythm against which extraordinary events could eventually unfold. The giants' understanding of the land and their cautious respect for its inhabitants further emphasized quiet, meditative nature of their emergence. In this calm yet charged atmosphere, the stage for eventual confrontation and cooperation was being established. The giants were discovering the limits and potential of their own strength, while Olympus maintained a serene vigilance, aware of the subtle threads connecting heaven, earth, and the beings moving across it. Gaia's presence beneath the surface, the latent energy of the Titans, and a careful awareness of the gods above combined to create a dynamic equilibrium. This intricate network of observation, patience, and subtle communication prepared the world for the story that would later unfold, a story in which power, strategy, and restraint would meet in quiet tension before rising to action. The rhythm of the giants' awakening, paired with the calm vigilance of Olympus, emphasized that awareness and patience were as powerful as brute force. Their deliberate movements, the subtle vibrations they left in the earth, and the gentle acknowledgement of one another's presence demonstrated a wisdom that had been forged in the quiet reflection of ages. In the stillness of these moments, the foundations of the Gigantomachy were being laid, not through immediate conflict, but through observation, understanding, and the silent weaving of connections between heaven, earth, and the immense beings now stirring across the world. The giants, moving across the world with quiet deliberation, began to develop a subtle understanding of their collective power. Each step, each breath, and each motion carried with it not only immense physical weight, but also an awareness of the interconnectedness of the world. Alcyoneus, with his grounded presence in the plains, felt the hum of the soil beneath him, the gentle ripple of rivers adjusting to his passage, and the whispered movement of trees bending under his immense form. Each interaction with the land was careful, measured, and reflective, as though he understood that his strength was only part of a larger balance that extended far beyond what he could see. This awareness, though silent, created a foundation of restraint, allowing him to move with purpose without disrupting the natural rhythm of the earth. Porphyrion, moving among cliffs and mountain ridges, became increasingly attuned to the delicate interplay between the earth and the sky. Winds shifted subtly around him, carrying hints of energy from Olympus and the distant stars above. Clouds seemed to form and dissipate with awareness of his presence, as though the heavens themselves were participating in a silent dialogue. Porphyrion's steps were measured, his movements a careful negotiation between the pull of gravity and the call of the heights. He sensed the presence of the other giants nearby, though they remained at distances that allowed for reflection and observation rather than immediate interaction. In these moments, he understood that power alone was insufficient. Insight, patience, and awareness were equally vital to navigating the world and the forces that existed within it. Enceladus, whose movements carried him closer to the hidden depth of the earth, felt the faint vibrations of the imprisoned titans echoing to the rock beneath his feet. These echoes were not mere disturbances. They were memories of past conflict, the residual energy of beings whose strength had once rivaled that of the gods themselves. He absorbed these subtle signals slowly, letting them inform his understanding of both the past and the present. Each step he took was deliberate, as though measuring the latent power within himself against the lessons embedded in the very foundations of the world. The Titan's presence reminded him that restraint and awareness could be as critical as raw strength, and that patience was a necessary companion to power. The smaller giants, moving across forests, rivers, and valleys, contributed to a growing network of awareness that extended far beyond their immediate perception. They interacted with the land in quiet harmony, bending trees without breaking them, displacing streams without flooding them, and leaving behind impressions that will remain for generations. In their movements, they began to sense not only one another, but also the subtle awareness of Olympus above. Though they could not see the gods, they felt the faint pressure of divine observation, a gentle reminder that their actions were part of a larger cosmic balance. This understanding encouraged further restraint and reflection, reinforcing the giants' capacity for patience even as their power grew. The Olympians, observing quietly from their celestial heights, noted the evolving awareness among the giants. Zeus sensed the collective presence of the earth-born beings, the slow development of patterns in their movements, and the subtle acknowledgement of one another's existence. He recognized that their strength, if unchecked, could disrupt the balance he had worked to maintain since the Titanomachy. Yet he also observed the restraint and reflection inherent in their behavior, realizing that the giants were learning the value of patience and understanding before acting. Athena, with her strategic mind, traced these movements carefully, considering the implications of each giant behavior for future interactions. Apollo and Artemis observed the interplay of light, shadow, and natural rhythms, noting how the giants influenced the world in ways both subtle and profound. The land itself seemed to respond to this growing awareness. Valleys, mountains, forests, and rivers subtly adjusted to the presence of the giants, accommodating their immense forms while maintaining the harmony of the environment. Wildlife observed cautiously, learning to move within these new patterns, and even the wind shifted its flow in response to their passage. These interactions reinforced the understanding that the giant strength was intertwined to the world itself, that their movements and choices had consequences that extended far beyond the immediate moment. This quiet reciprocity between the earth and the giants created a living, dynamic system in which power and restraint, strength and patience coexisted. The giants began to explore the concept of cooperation without words, learning to sense each other's presence and intentions through subtle vibrations, shift in energy, and the patterns of movement across the land. Alcyoneus and Porphyrion, though separated by vast distances, could feel one another's rhythms, their awareness creating a silent dialogue that did not require speech. Enceladus, moving deeper into hidden valleys and hills, sensed their movements as well, weaving them into his own understanding of the interconnected world. Even the smaller giants contributed to this network, creating a tapestry of presence, awareness, and restraint that mirrored Gaia's enduring patience. This growing understanding extended beyond the giants themselves to include the relationship between Earth and Olympus. Though the gods remained distant, their observation influenced the giants' sense of timing, consequence, and the limits of their own actions. Each giant, through subtle perception, came to understand that the heavens above were aware of their movements, and that these divine observers valued patience and wisdom alongside strength. The presence of Olympus acted as both a guide and a challenge, reminding the giants that their power was significant but not absolute, that restraint and understanding were as critical as raw force in the unfolding narrative of the world. The giants' awareness of their own potential and their connection to one another created a delicate tension within the landscape. It was a tension that did not manifest as violence or conflict, but as a persistent energy, a quiet anticipation that the harmony of the world could one day require both their collective strength and their capacity for restraint. The subtle vibrations of their presence, felt through the land, were mirrored in the quiet observation of Olympus, creating a dynamic equilibrium in which both sides prepared for events yet to come. In these moments, the giants learned not only the extent of their physical power, but also the deeper importance of reflection, patience, and the careful calibration of influence. Even mortals, though unaware of the immensity of the forces moving around them, contributed to this balance. Villages, rivers, winds, and forests created a backdrop of rhythm and continuity that allowed the giants to calibrate their movements. The awareness that had been quietly building among the giants now began to manifest in subtle coordination, though each moved independently. Exploring forests, rivers, plains, and mountains, a faint rhythm seemed to emerge between them. Alcyoneus, moving through the rolling plains, sensed vibrations that echoed from distant cliffs where Porphyrion traversed, a silent pulse of presence that conveyed more than words ever could. Enceladus, journeying through deep valleys and hidden hills, felt the resonances of the other giants' movements in the soil and rock, integrating them into a growing understanding of collective awareness. Even the smaller giants, scattered across forests and lakes, contributed to this emergent network, their steps, shifts, and presence forming a subtle symphony of motion that reflected Gaia's enduring patience and quiet wisdom. The world itself responded to this pattern in ways that were almost imperceptible to mortal eyes. Trees bent their branches slightly, creating gentle arcs over pathways that the giants might tread. Streams adjusted their flow, circumventing obstructions and reflecting light differently as the immense forms moved alongside them. Mountains seemed to exhale slowly as the giants climbed or descended, their massive bodies generating vibrations that the earth absorbed with quiet acknowledgement. Even the winds adjusted their course, carrying whispers of energy between distant giants, providing subtle signals that informed the silent communication taking place. This invisible network of awareness allowed the giants to move not just as individuals, but as an interconnected force, guided by the rhythms of the earth, the air, and the subtle current of energy that ran unseen. The Olympians observed all of this with patient attention. Zeus noted the emergence of coordinated movement, sensing that the giants were beginning to act not merely as solitary beings, but as a collective with a growing awareness of mutual presence. Athena, her mind sharp and deliberate, considered the implications of this emergent pattern. The giants' ability to sense one another across vast distances, without speech or gesture, suggested a latent intelligence that could pose challenges or opportunities in the events yet to unfold. Apollo and Artemis observed the interaction of light, wind, and natural rhythm with the giants' movements, recognizing that even the heavens themselves were subtly responsive to these immense beings. The gods' observation, calm yet focused, maintained a balance between intervention and patient study, ensuring that understanding would precede action when the time came. As the giants continued their exploration, their awareness of the natural world deepened. Alcyoneus paused at the edge of a wide river, sensing the flow of water and the subtle pressures of the currents beneath his feet. The river seemed to acknowledge him, bending gently, guiding his movement without resistance. Porphyrion, perched on a high ridge, observed the interplay of wind and stone, noting how the air moved in response to his presence, how distant birds adjusted their flight to accommodate his immense shadow. Enceladus, moving through a dense forest, felt the roots of ancient trees beneath his feet, their silent wisdom flowing upward to the soil, shaping his path without the need for conscious thought. Each giant began to perceive the world as a living system, one that responded to their power not with resistance but with subtle adjustment, guiding them through patterns of influence and restraint. Within this quiet coordination, the giants began to explore the limits of their own strength. They tested the boundaries of rivers and forests, the resistance of mountains and cliffs, all with deliberate care. Alcyoneus pushed gently against a rocky outcrop, feeling the response of stone and learning how far he could move without shattering the balance of his surroundings. Porphyrion leapt across jagged ridges, measuring the flow of air and the support of narrow ledges, discovering precise ways in which his immense form could navigate terrain without causing unnecessary destruction. Enceladus, descending into valleys and caves, felt the vibrations of the earth respond beneath him, noting which areas could bear his weight and which required careful, measured steps. This exploration of limits was both practical and meditative, a reflection of the giants' growing awareness of responsibility, power, and consequence. The giants' awareness of one another also deepened in these days of quiet movement. Alcyoneus could feel Porphyrion's presence through subtle vibrations in distant hills, sensing when he paused or shifted his weight, when he moved forward or adjusted his path. Enceladus picked up on these same signals, integrating them into a broader understanding of collective rhythm. The smaller giants contributed as well, their presence felt in forests and streams, adding nuance to the shared awareness. Though they never spoke, never roared, and never explicitly signaled one another, their coordination suggested an intuitive intelligence, a shared understanding rooted in the rhythms of the earth itself and the latent energy that flowed through all of them. Even the Olympians sensed this emerging harmony. Zeus noted the subtle patterns in the giants' movements, recognizing that their strength alone did not define them. It was their patience, awareness, and coordination that truly made them formidable. Athena reflected on how these patterns might influence future events, considering strategies and countermeasures that could respect the giant awareness while maintaining the balance of Olympus. Apollo observed how sunlight reflected from rivers, cliffs, and plains, revealing patterns in movement and energy that might otherwise remain invisible. Artemis, attuned to the rhythms of night, felt similar patterns under moonlight, perceiving the giant's presence across distances in ways imperceptible to mortals. The Olympians' calm observation reinforced the importance of patience, awareness, and measured action, ensuring that intervention would be guided by understanding rather than reaction. In addition to their awareness of one another, the giants also began to sense the subtle interplay between their own power and the latent energy of the titans imprisoned beneath the earth. Enceladus, most attuned to these vibrations, felt the echoes of their sorrow, the residual strength that had been restrained for eons, and the faint guidance of Gaia herself. This energy, while not immediately threatening, provided context for their own abilities, emphasizing the importance of careful movement and reflection. Alcyoneus and Porphyrion, though less directly connected, felt faint traces of these echoes in the land, reinforcing the subtle awareness that the giant's existence was intertwined with forces both seen and unseen. Through this slow and deliberate exploration, the giants became more than mere embodiments of strength. They evolved into conscious participants in the living world, capable of understanding not only their own potential, but also the complex interplay between the earth, one another, the imprisoned titans, and the distant Olympians. The giants' awareness continued to deepen as they moved to the earth's vast landscapes, learning not only the extent of their own strength, but the subtle relationships that connected them to the world and to each other. Alcyoneus wandered across wide plains with the grass bent beneath his weight, feeling the heartbeat of the soil as if it were alive beneath his feet. Streams flowed differently in response to his presence, twisting and curving to accommodate him, while trees along his path adjusted their branches in quiet acknowledgement. Every step, though immense, was deliberate, measured, and thoughtful, a reflection of the giant's growing understanding of harmony and restraint. The earth, patient and enduring, seemed to guide him, providing lessons in balance that no spoken word could convey. Porphyrion, moving along cliffs and mountain ridges, became increasingly attuned to the subtler forces of air and gravity. Wind shifted around him in ways that suggested subtle guidance. Clouds moved as if aware of his immense form, and distant birds adjusted their flight to account for the shadows he cast. Each climb, leap, and pause allowed him to understand the balance between power and caution, the tension between the sky's freedom and the solid support of the earth. In this quiet, reflective exploration, Porphyrion discovered that true strength required not only physical power but awareness, patience, and a deep understanding of the natural world. The mountains themselves seemed to respond, providing support, testing him gently, and teaching the lessons of measured movement. Enceladus, moving deeper into valleys and hidden caverns, remained attuned to the faint vibrations of the imprisoned titans. Their echoes resonated through rock and soil, carrying whispers of ancient sorrow, restrained power, and enduring knowledge. Each step he took was guided by these subtle currents, integrating the lessons of the past into his present awareness. He understood that the Titans' influence, though distant, shaped the potential of the giants themselves, reinforcing the importance of restraint and reflection. As he moved, he felt an invisible connection to the other giants, sensing their movements and rhythms as they spread across forests, rivers, and mountains, creating a quiet, interconnected network of presence and understanding. The smaller giants also contributed to this emergent consciousness. Wandering through forests and across streams, they created subtle ripples in the land, leaving impressions that reflected their awareness and growing coordination. Trees bent gently, water flowed around them with quiet compliance, and even the smallest creatures adapted to their presence without fear. In this way, the giants collectively became an extension of the earth itself, harmonizing their immense power with the natural rhythms and energies that surrounded them. The silent communication between land and being mirrored the interconnectedness of Gaia's own essence, a reminder that the world and its inhabitants were woven together in delicate balance. The Olympians observed all of this with attentive calm. Zeus, seated upon his throne, felt the growing network of presence and coordination among the giants, noting the subtle patterns of movement and awareness that had emerged. He understood that these beings were learning not only their own capabilities, but the delicate interplay between power, restraint, and environmental harmony. Athena, her mind sharp and deliberate, analyzed these patterns, considering how the giants' growing coordination could influence future events. Apollo and Artemis, attuned to light, shadow, and the rhythms of day and night, noted how the giants' presence altered these patterns, reflecting awareness and restraint in ways both subtle and profound. Even minor spirits of wind, water, and forest seemed to participate in this unfolding story, transmitting quiet messages and reinforcing the network of awareness. The giants' awareness of each other had grown significantly. Alcyoneus could sense Porphyrion's movements across distant ridges, the subtle vibrations traveling through mountains and valleys, creating an unspoken dialogue of presence and intention. Enceladus, moving deeper into hidden valleys, felt these same vibrations, integrating them with the rhythms he perceived from the titans below and the natural world around him. The smaller giants contributed in similar ways, enhancing the web of coordination that now stretched across forests, rivers, plains, and mountains. This emergent intelligence, though not expressed through words, allowed the giants to act with cohesion and insight, harmonizing their actions and understanding without needing to convene physically. The earth itself seemed to recognize and accommodate this growing understanding. Rivers adjusted their courses, flowing more gently around obstacles. Streams reflected light differently as massive forms passed, and valleys seemed to breathe in sync with the giants' movements. Trees and plants responded to the pressure of immense feet and shifting weight, bending without breaking, their quiet flexibility, providing lessons in balance and subtlety. The air itself carried messages, shifting in currents that connected distant places, creating a network of communication that both informed and guided the giants. The world, patient and enduring, became an active participant in the shaping of this awareness, reflecting the quiet interdependence between power, presence, and the natural order. Even as the giants' awareness and coordination grew, the Olympians remained calm observers. They did not intervene, understanding that premature action could disrupt the balance being carefully established. Zeus noted the subtle refinement of their power, the way they harmonized strength with patience. Athena reflected on the strategic implications, considering how this emergent coordination might influence potential future interactions. Apollo and Artemis continued to observe the play of light and shadow, the flow of wind, and the subtle responses of nature, noting how all elements were quietly aligning in preparation for the events yet to come. The Olympians' vigilance maintained equilibrium, ensuring that understanding and restraint preceded any necessary action. In their continued exploration, the giants began to internalize the lessons of restraint and harmony. They discovered that their immense strength, while awe-inspiring, was not the sole measure of their potential. Observing one another, responding to the world, and sensing the faint influence of Olympus, they learned that awareness, patience, and subtle coordination were equally powerful. Alcyoneus, Porphyrion, and Enceladus, together with the smaller giants, moved as a living network, their collective understanding shaped by observation, reflection, and quiet interaction. This period of patient growth and learning laid the foundation for future events, ensuring that when action became necessary, it would be guided by insight and harmony rather than recklessness. Thus, the stage was prepared for the eventual convergence of power, strategy, and consequence. As the days and nights passed, the giants' understanding of their surroundings continued to deepen, transforming their movements into a quiet exploration of both the natural world and their own growing awareness. Alcyoneus, traversing the open plains, began to sense the subtle textures of the land beneath him in ways that went beyond mere touch. Each ripple of grass, each gentle sway of a tree, and each minor shift in the soil spoke to him of the world's readiness to respond to his presence. Streams bent gently, accommodating his steps without rushing or spilling over their banks, and the air seemed to move in anticipation of his massive form, adjusting quietly around him. In this meditative awareness, he realized that the earth was not simply a passive stage for his movements. It was an active participant, a living presence that guided and informed him. Porphyrion, climbing cliffs and traversing jagged ridges, found himself increasingly attuned to the delicate currents of wind and weather. The movement of air around him provided information, revealing hidden ledges, subtle variations in the rock, and even the presence of other giants moving across the distant horizon. Clouds shifted gently above, forming patterns that seemed to acknowledge his passage, and distant birds adjusted their flight in concert with his shadow. Every motion became a dialogue with the world, a lesson in harmony and balance, teaching him that even the most immense strength required patience, observation, and respect for the environment. In these quiet moments, he learned that power was not only measured by size or force, but by the awareness and intentionality behind each action. Enceladus, moving through dense forests, deep valleys, and hidden caves, remained closely connected to the subtle vibrations of the imprisoned titans below the earth. These tremors carried more than raw energy. They were echoes of history, memories of struggle, and traces of knowledge that had been preserved for eons. He allowed himself to be guided by these faint signals, integrating them into his understanding of the world above. The Titan's presence reminded him that restraint, patience, and careful observation were as important as raw power, for even immense strength could be tempered or redirected by wisdom and awareness. Enceladus began to see his role as more than a mere participant in the world. He was a bridge between the forces below and the movements above, a living connection between past and present. The smaller giants, though less individually imposing, continued to shape the environment subtly with their movements. Forests adapted to their presence, streams adjusted their flows, and wildlife learned to coexist with these enormous beings. Each step they took was deliberate and measured, contributing to the growing awareness that the giants were more than a collection of isolated forces. They were a network of consciousness, interconnected through movement, energy, and shared understanding. Their silent coordination extended across vast distances, forming an intricate tapestry of presence that reflected Gaia's enduring patience and quiet wisdom. From the heights of Olympus, the gods watched with attentive serenity. Zeus noted the growing sophistication of the giants' coordination, observing the way subtle vibrations and energies conveyed information across distances. Athena, ever strategic, mapped these interactions mentally, considering the implications for both the present and the future. Apollo, attuned to the subtle variations of sunlight across plains, rivers, and mountains, observed the patterns created by the giants' movements, discerning a rhythm that hinted at intelligence and restraint. Artemis, watching the interplay of moonlight and shadows, felt a similar sense of coordination, noticing how the giant adapted to the natural world and to each other's presence. Even minor spirits and elemental forces participated in this quiet observation, reinforcing the network of awareness between Olympus, the giants, and the living earth below. As this awareness grew, the giants began to anticipate one another's movements in ways that went beyond simple reaction. Alcyoneus could feel Porphyrion's approach long before he was visible, adjusting his own pace and position to harmonize with the collective flow. Enceladus, attuned to both the earth below and the giant around him, moved with a sense of timing and consideration that reflected an emerging understanding of strategy. Even the smaller giants responded to these subtle cues, adjusting their paths and rhythms to maintain coherence and unity. This quiet coordination, invisible to mortal eyes, transformed the giants from solitary wanderers into a connected, thoughtful force that interacted harmoniously with the world and each other. The land itself seemed to participate in this evolving harmony. Valleys exhaled gently as massive feet pressed down, mountains adjusted subtly to accommodate movement along their ridges, and rivers created soft eddies to accommodate the passage of immense forms. Trees, plants, and even flowers seemed to respond with gentle grace, bending without breaking, subtly guiding the giant's steps. The wind carried messages across distances, communicating shifts in presence and intention that connected one giant to another. Through these interactions, the world itself became a partner, teaching lessons in patience, balance, and the careful use of power. Meanwhile, the Olympians maintained their calm vigilance. Zeus recognized that the giants' growing coordination represented both potential and risk. Their awareness was impressive, yet the slightest misstep could disturb the delicate equilibrium of the world. Athena continued to monitor patterns, planning for the future while allowing the giants to explore their limits and develop understanding. Apollo and Artemis observed natural rhythms, noting subtle signs that might indicate both progress and imbalance. The gods' patience mirrored that of the earth, ensuring that intervention would be measured, informed, and purposeful rather than reactionary. The giants' exploration of their own capabilities also extended into reflection. They began to understand the relationships between strength, patience, and consequence. Alcyoneus tested the resilience of the plains beneath his feet, noting how far he could push without creating destruction. Porphyrion explored mountain ledges, understanding the interplay between air, gravity, and support. Enceladus moved through hidden valleys, absorbing lessons from the echoes of the Titans and the vibrations of the world. Each giant, through careful observation and practice, internalized the principle that power required awareness, and awareness required restraint. In these quiet days, the giants were no longer simply enormous beings moving across the world. They became conscious participants in a living, dynamic system. Their presence influenced and was influenced by the land, the Titans, and each other, while Olympus watched patiently from above. Gaia's enduring influence beneath the earth, the faint echoes of the Titans, and the growing coordination among the giants created a complex network of relationships and understanding, a living prelude to the events that would eventually culminate in the Gigantomachy. The stage was being set not through conflict, but through reflection, awareness, and the slow, deliberate weaving of connections that would define the story yet to unfold. The giants' journey across the land continued with a quiet purpose, their movements now shaped as much by reflection as by raw strength. Alcyoneus, moving along gentle hills and open plains, felt the subtle currents of life around him as clearly as the pulse of the earth beneath his feet. Grasses bent softly, streams curved in his wake, and trees leaned gently, acknowledging the immense weight he carried without resisting it. Each interaction with the land was deliberate, a silent dialogue in which the earth seemed to teach him lessons of balance, patience, and timing. He realized that power, though formidable, was most meaningful when exercised with awareness, and that his influence could shape the world as much through subtlety as through force. Porphyrion continued his ascent along rugged cliffs, observing how the wind shifted and how the clouds formed intricate patterns in response to his presence. Birds adjusted their flight paths to avoid his shadow, and even the distant echoes of mountains seemed to respond to his movement. Each leap and pause became a study in the interplay of air, rock, and body, revealing a natural rhythm that required attention and care to navigate successfully. Porphyrion learned that strength alone did not guarantee safety or progress. Understanding the world around him and adjusting to its subtle feedback was equally important. Through these experiences, he developed a sense of harmony with the environment, a quiet mastery of movement that respected both the land and the unseen energy surrounding him. Enceladus, moving through valleys and hidden forests, maintained his attunement to the vibrations of the Titans imprisoned beneath the earth. The faint hum of their power, though distant, carried knowledge and wisdom accumulated over eons. He sensed their sorrow, their frustration, and their restrained energy, which spoke to him of consequences far greater than the immediate landscape. Enceladus began to weave these lessons into his own movements, understanding that the balance of the world depended on measured action and thoughtful reflection. The earth below him became a teacher, each tremor and echo offering guidance, reminding him that patience and awareness could be as potent as any display of strength. Even the smaller giants contributed to this growing consciousness, their movements shaping forests, streams, and valleys in subtle ways. Each step pressed into the soil, leaving impressions that reflected careful awareness rather than recklessness. Trees bent to accommodate their passage, rivers shifted their flows gently, and the creatures of the land adapted to their presence without fear or panic. This quiet integration of power and awareness created a network of interaction that connected all giants with one another and with the natural world. Though unseen by mortals, this system of influence allowed them to move in harmony, coordinating instinctively across great distances, guided by the rhythms of the earth and the faint energies of Olympus. The Olympians continued their patient observation from Mount Olympus. Zeus, sensing the growing coordination among the giants, recognized both opportunity and risk. Their collective awareness suggested that they were learning not only to control their own immense strength, but also to operate as a unified presence capable of influencing the world on a scale previously unimagined. Athena, her mind sharp and meticulous, considered these developments, envisioning how the giants' coordination might impact the balance between Earth and Olympus. Apollo and Artemis observed patterns of light, shadow, and natural energy, noting how the giants' presence subtly reshaped the land and its rhythms. The gods' calm vigilance mirrored the patience of the earth itself, ensuring that action, when required, will be measured, strategic, and precise. Through these observations, the giants began to internalize the lessons of cooperation and collective awareness. Alcyoneus, feeling the faint vibrations of Porphyrion across distant mountains, adjusted his path to align with the silent rhythm of their shared presence. Enceladus, sensing the subtler current of energy from both the earth below and the other giant around him, moved in harmony with these forces, integrating each shift and tremor into a broader understanding of collective movement. The smaller giants, scattered across forests and rivers, contributed to the invisible network, amplifying cohesion of the group without conscious effort. This emerging coordination reflected not only instinct, but also intelligence, a quiet understanding of timing, space, and influence that made their power exponentially more effective. The world itself responded to this growing network of consciousness. Rivers bent slightly, altering their flow to accommodate the giants' passage. Forests adjusted their density subtly to create pathways without breaking the integrity of their growth. Even the air seemed to carry messages between distant points, transmitting faint vibrations that conveyed information about presence, movement, and intention. Mountains seemed to inhale and exhale in synchrony with the giants' rhythms, creating an invisible choreography of energy and force. The Earth's subtle adjustments reinforced the principle that power, when aligned with awareness, could coexist harmoniously with the world rather than disrupting it. As the giant awareness expanded, so too did their understanding of consequence. Alcyoneus explored the limits of his strength in the plains, discovering how much pressure the earth could bear without permanent damage. Porphyrion measured the support of cliffs and ledges, learning to balance immense force with precision. Enceladus, feeling the echoes of the Titans and the subtle pulses of the earth, recognized that even the slightest miscalculation could have far-reaching effects. These lessons, absorbed slowly and thoughtfully, instilled a sense of responsibility alongside raw power, preparing the giants for the inevitable challenges that lay ahead. The Olympians, observing this evolution, maintained a careful balance between awareness and non-interference. The giants continued their slow, deliberate exploration of the world, each movement a lesson in both power and awareness. Alcyoneus traversed the wide plains, feeling the subtle vibrations beneath his enormous feet. He noticed how the grass bent and streams curved gently to accommodate his presence. Even the smallest stones shifted in anticipation, revealing patterns in the earth that guided him forward. In these quiet moments, he began to understand that strength alone was not enough. True power required harmony with the world around him, an awareness of consequence, and patience. Every pause, every adjustment in his stride became a meditation, teaching him restraint and focus. Porphyrion moved along jagged cliffs and mountain ridges, attuned to the delicate shifts in wind and cloud patterns. The air whispered guidance, currents of unseen energy indicating safe paths, hidden ledges, and distant movements of other giants. Birds adjusted their flight instinctively, forming patterns that reflected the silent communication of nature. Porphyrion began to realize that even the strongest being must respect the rhythms of the world. Each step became a careful negotiation between force and finesse, a lesson in observation and adaptability. The mountains themselves seemed to breathe in harmony with his movements, revealing a balance between power and understanding that was essential to navigating the rugged terrain safely. Enceladus, exploring hidden valleys, dense forests, and subterranean caverns, remained highly attuned to the faint vibrations of the titans imprisoned beneath the earth. These tremors, subtle yet persistent, carried knowledge, restraint, and the weight of ages. Every echo was a reminder that the present was inseparable from the past, that actions taken now would reverberate across time. Enceladus allowed these vibrations to guide him, integrating the lessons of history into his movements. He understood that power was not just a measure of force, but a responsibility to the world and its hidden energies. Each decision he made reflected thought, patience, and careful attention to consequence. The smaller giants, though less physically imposing, contributed to this growing web of awareness. Their movements through forests, streams, and meadows left subtle impressions that shaped the land without disruption. Trees bent gently, water flowed in response, and wildlife adjusted to their presence instinctively. Together, the giants' actions formed a silent network of coordination, linking them to each other and to the living earth. They began to sense the movements of their peers across distances, aligning instinctively, as though connected by a hidden current of awareness. From Olympus, the gods watched in quiet patience. Zeus noted the emergence of collective intelligence, the way the giants' movements now reflected both awareness and foresight. Athena mapped patterns of coordination and strategy, anticipating how their developing intelligence might influence future events. Apollo observed light reflecting off plains and rivers, interpreting subtle cues of insight, restraint, and adaptation. Artemis detected similar rhythms in shadows and moonlight, noting how the giants' evolving understanding shaped their movements. Even the minor spirits of wind, water, and forest transmitted faint signals that enhanced the giant awareness and reinforced the delicate balance of the natural world. Through observation and practice, the giants' movements grew more intuitive. Alcyoneus could sense Porphyrion's presence across distant ridges, adjusting his pace in harmony with the group. Enceladus aligned with vibrations from the titans and fellow giants, moving with foresight and precision. The smaller giants, acting instinctively, refined their coordination, allowing the group to operate as a unified, harmonious force. Each step became a meditation in motion, blending awareness, restraint, and immense strength. The natural world responded in kind. Rivers shifted subtly, forests bent without breaking, and air carried faint messages, guiding the giants' movements. Through careful observation and reflection, they discovered that true power was not in unchecked force, but in harmonizing strength with patience and awareness. Each motion, each pause, and each breath became a deliberate act, preparing the giants for the challenges ahead while maintaining balance with the world around them. In this way, the giants evolved beyond mere embodiments of raw power. They became conscious participants in a living, dynamic world, attuned to one another, to the land, and to the subtle guidance of the forces around them. Every step, every motion, every interaction carried lessons in restraint, insight, and coordination, laying the foundation for the events that would define the Gigantomachy. The stage was being set, not with chaos or impulsive force, but with careful preparation, reflection, and the quiet cultivation of awareness and unity. The giants moved across the land with quiet deliberation, their immense forms blending with the rhythms of the earth. Alcyoneus felt the subtle vibrations beneath his feet, the grass bending softly, streams curving around him as if guiding his steps. Each movement became an exercise in harmony, teaching him that true strength lay not in force alone, but in awareness and restraint. Porphyrion, climbing cliffs and ridges, noticed the whisper of winds, the patterns of clouds, and the flight of birds adjusting instinctively to his passage. The mountains seemed to breathe with him, offering lessons in balance and timing, showing that the mastery of power required observation and patience. Enceladus, moving through forests and hidden valleys, remained attuned to the faint tremors of the Titans imprisoned below the earth. Their echoes carried wisdom and restraint, guiding his steps and teaching him that every action had consequences. The smaller giants moved with quiet purpose, leaving subtle impressions that shaped forests and rivers without harm. Together, these movements created a silent network of awareness, linking all the giants to one another and to the living land. From Olympus, the gods observed patiently. Zeus sensed their growing coordination. Athena mapped patterns of intelligence and strategy. Apollo studied the interplay of light and reflection, and Artemis noticed subtle rhythms in shadow and movement. Even the spirits of air, water, and forest contributed, transmitting cues that reinforce harmony. The giants, now attuned to each other in the land, learned to anticipate movements, refine their steps, and act with quiet deliberation. The earth itself responded. Rivers curved, forests bent, and air carried messages, teaching the giants that restraint and observation amplified the impact of their immense strength. The giants' journey of awareness continued as they moved with deliberate care across plains, mountains, and valleys. Alcyoneus felt the land respond beneath him, sensing subtle vibrations and learning how to leave a mark without destruction. Porphyrion observed air, wind, and light, reading the world like a guide, each step measured with precision. Enceladus integrated the faint tremors of the Titans below into his movements, sensing the weight of history and consequence in every decision. Even the smaller giants contributed, weaving their presence into forests and rivers with quiet grace, maintaining cohesion and balance. From Olympus, the gods watched with patient curiosity. Zeus observed the emergence of coordination. Athena considered the strategic implications. Apollo studied light across the landscape, and Artemis noticed the subtle interplay of shadow and movement. Minor spirits of air, water, and forest transmitted faint signals, creating a network of awareness that linked the giants, the land, and Olympus. The giants' collective presence became a force of both power and harmony, their strength tempered by observation and restraint. They began to anticipate each other's movements intuitively. Alcyoneus could sense Porphyrion across distant ridges. Enceladus integrated vibrations from Titans and peers. The smaller giants adjusted instinctively. The land itself participated, rivers bending, forests swaying, and air carrying guidance. Through patient observation and reflection, the giants discovered that power was most effective when harmonized with awareness, foresight, and respect for consequence. Each step, pause, and movement became a meditation in motion, preparing them for the challenges that awaited, grounded in insight rather than impulsive force. Long after the world settled from the earliest ages of creation, and long after the Titans had risen to their places among the heavens, a quiet heaviness began to gather within Gaia, the ancient earth. She had witnessed countless eras unfold, some peaceful, some turbulent, but the sorrow she carried lingered deeply, like a slow echo that never quite faded. Her grief did not arrive suddenly. It grew quietly, like shadows lengthening at dusk, soft but steady, shaped by memories of pain she had never fully released. That sorrow began in the ages when Uranus, the sky, rejected some of her earliest children. The Cyclopes and the Cenomanes were born from her as naturally as mountains and seas, yet they had been pushed into the depths simply because their forms did not mirror the beauty of the Titans. Gaia's heart had ached then, though she did not speak of it. She remained patient, as Earth must always be, bearing the weight of creation in silence. But wounds carried for too long have a way of transforming, and even the gentlest being can feel the burden of sadness stretching across eternity. Later, when the Titanomachy erupted, the great war between the Titans and the gods of Olympus, another layer of sorrow settled over her. She had not wished for conflict, but conflict had come nonetheless, sweeping across the world like a storm that could not be halted. Gaia watched as her Titan children fell one by one, overthrown by Zeus and his siblings. Their defeat was not surprising. Time itself had been shifting toward a new age. But as the Titans were cast down into Tartarus, imprisoned in the deepest reaches of the earth, she felt the ache sharpen again. These were her children, too. Their cries, swallowed by the depths, trembled through her being. Though Zeus and the new Olympian order established stability across the heavens, Gaia could not shake the echo of her grief. She supported the new world. They were still her children, and she loved them, but she felt the imbalance between past and present, between those who ruled above and those who suffered below. Gaia was vast. She felt everything. She held the weight of mountains, the pressure of oceans, the growth of forests, and the breath of the winds. But beneath all of it, she also held memories that did not rest easily. Time passed, soft and subtle. The world quieted after the Gigantomachy. The Olympians established peace across the cosmos, and mortals would eventually rise, learning to build their lives upon the calm earth Gaia provided. Yet deep below, in chambers of stone and shadow, the imprisoned Titans stirred in their heavy silence, an echo Gaia could never fully ignore. Their suffering vibrated through her core, and though she tried to remain steady, it weighed on her more heavily with each passing century. This grief, this ancient tension, did not erupt like a storm. Instead, it gathered inside Gaia slowly, like pressure building deep beneath the crust of the world. She felt her heart stretch between loyalty to her new divine children above and the pain of those trapped below. She felt the imbalance of the universe pressing against her, asking to be corrected, yet offering no clear path toward harmony. In this soft retelling, Gaia's emotions are not violent or vengeful. They are deep, ancient, and quiet, carried to millennia like a whisper beneath the soil. She wanted equilibrium. She wanted peace. She wanted all her creations to have a place where they belonged, without rejection, without imprisonment, without forced silence. But creation never unfolds perfectly, and even the earth herself must sometimes express what she has held inside for too long. One day, or rather, one era, for time in the age of myths cannot be measured by ordinary days, Gaia felt her sorrow solidify into a new form. It did not arrive with thunder. It did not appear with fire or trembling earthquakes. Instead, it grew within her like seeds nurtured by grief. And from those seeds emerged beings of immense presence, shaped from the raw depths of the earth rather than the gentleness of her surface. These were the giants, creatures born not from chaos nor from harmony, but from Gaia's accumulated pain after ages of cosmic imbalance. The giants emerged not as monsters, but as vast symbols of the earth's restless heart. Their forms were immense, towering, powerful. Some myths describe them with serpentine legs, others with limbs like tree trunks and voices like rolling stone. But in the sleep-friendly telling, imagine them as monumental spirits rising slowly from the soil, quiet expressions of ancient emotion taking physical shape. They carried with them the strength of mountains, the endurance of stone, and the relentless persistence of nature itself. They were born not from malice, but from Gaia's longing to release what she had held within her for too long. Each giant reflected a different aspect of her hidden depths. One rose from volcanic heat, embodying pressure and unrest. Another rose from thick forests, filled with the stubborn vitality of roots pushing through soil. Others emerged from cliffs and caverns, shaped by shadows and old memories. They were children of Earth, but unlike the Titans who represented fixed cosmic forces, the giants embodied raw, untamed energy, wild, unpredictable, and full of unresolved emotion. Among them were figures who would one day be known by name across mythology: Alcyoneus, whose strength was bound to the land on which he stood; Porphyrion, immense and fierce, born from Gaia's deepest rage; Enceladus, whose spirit carried the rumbling force of shifting tectonic plates. And yet, even these great beings began quietly. They did not rise with the intention of war. They simply existed, new and immense, awakening to a world that trembled slightly beneath their presence. Gaia did not command them immediately. She did not whisper vengeance into their ears or encourage rebellion. She simply released them into existence, allowing the universe to adjust around them. But existence itself can reshape destiny. The sight of the Titans bound in Tartarus, restricted eternally within Gaia's own body, stirred emotions within the giants. They sensed their mother's sorrow. They felt her imbalance. And though it was never their purpose to seek destruction, their very presence challenged a new cosmic order that Zeus had worked so hard to establish. Gaia watched as the giants grew in strength and awareness. She saw the way their immense forms shifted landscapes, the way mountains trembled slightly when they moved, the way forests sighed deeply when they passed through. They were not like the Titans. They were not like the Olympians. They were something new, ancient yet young, timeless yet wild. It was only a matter of time before they would collide with Olympus. Yet in this quiet moment of their beginning, the world remained still. Gaia allowed herself a moment of release, a breath after ages of grief held too tightly. The giants were her expression, her unspoken emotions finding form in the world. And though she could not foresee every consequence, she felt relief in the simple truth that her sorrow no longer remained buried within her. From this deep place of emotion, the story of the Gigantomachy began, not with war, but with the quiet birth of beings shaped by the Earth's ancient heart. In them, Gaia's grief finally had a voice in the universe, still calm for now, waited for the echo of that voice to reach the heavens.